Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk 20s podcast. I hope you guys have had a great week. I'm with my two lovely co-hosts, as usual, Mr. Glenn Tatum Fletcher Jr. and Connor is labeled as Connor Man.
I don't know why.
I don't know.
Yeah, Connor
I don't know
Man.
why either. But Connor Man. Back with
That
yet
guy.
another episode for you guys.
Yeah.
For this episode, we're talking about something that we kind of have touched on here or there, bits and pieces, but it is a balance, something that goes hand in hand with ego and how we view ourselves and all kinds of stuff. The title for this week is Selfishness versus Selflessness. So we have a quote in there. We're talking about how both themes are important in life. When is it right to focus on one or the other? What's one quality of selfishness and one quality of selflessness that you would like to improve on? There are elements of both in all of our lives, and it's important to figure out what we can do to improve, and a bunch more in this episode. Selfishness versus selflessness. I am very curious about how this episode goes, because we do have three different personalities here. As usual, some of these kind of topics, we get three completely different answers, and it's really cool to hear you guys' perspective on this. So, Connor, if you want to start us off with your amazing quote, let's hop into this.
It's a cool quote. Actually, I probably should look up who said it here in a sec, so I'll do it while I'm reading it. Here's the quote I wanted to kick off the episode with. Almost every sinful action ever committed can be traced back to a selfish motive. It is a trait we hate in other people, but we justify it in ourselves. I think the last part, especially that last sentence, is very interesting. I think it kind of paints a picture of chronic selfishness and why people continually make selfish actions in their life because they justify it in themselves, right? So what do you guys think about that quote? What does that have to do with our topic? And, do you like it? What do y'all think? I'm going to look up who said it in a sec.
Man, I mean, truth.
That is it's hard to hear that, but it's true.
Truth. People are very
Selfish.
motivated. Yeah, motivated for themselves, right? At the end of the day, we care about ourselves the most, no matter what we say. That's just the way we're wired. But yeah, it is a trait we hate in other people, but justify it in ourselves. Man, the truth hurts sometimes, but
Truth is much needed.
Truth is much needed. I think that's completely true. I really don't even have anything to add to it, because I mean, what can you say to, elaborate on that? I just think it's true. That's my answer.
Yeah, GT, I'll let you go out real quick. I was just going to say, Stephen Kendrick, he's like an American film writer and producer. He was the one who wrote this quote. Funnily enough, he's not super well known, but it's a pretty insightful quote. But it's just so interesting because it's like, I think self-awareness comes into play with this topic a lot. And I truly think that the whole justification in yourself, if you're not even aware that you're justifying your selfish actions by not having self-awareness, you're going to continue making selfish decisions. Whereas I think having self-awareness about how your actions affect other people is at least a step towards selflessness, personally. That was my interpretation of the quote, but we're all prone to it, clearly. GT, what do you think?
Well, hey, there we go. No, I agree with it. I know this is something very hard to hear because we've all had different things where, we've all been selfish sometimes. We'll talk later about the balance of selfishness and selflessness. But no, I'm with Tanner on this. I mean, how do you put any more into that? I mean, that's just the cold hard truth. Whether you like it or not, that's just is how it is. We talked about this because this tends to lean more to like the selfishness, but both of these like themes are very important. Obviously, like there's a balance in between. No one's going to be 100% one way because the cold hard truth, we started it off right. But when is it right for us to focus on either thing?
There's no answer. It's all about what you want to do. If you want to be a selfish individual, you are going to focus on being selfish more often. If you want to be more empathetic and more of a people pleaser / being there for other individuals in your life, then you're going to be a little more selfless. But there is no right answer of when you do one and when you do the other. It's just a matter of free will and what you decide you want to do it about. If you're trying to be a good person, what I would say is if you are around other people, you're dealing with other people are coming with you towards advice. Obviously, that's a time to be selfless. But in terms of your individual goals, if you're trying to accomplish something that is a huge individual based goal, then you need to be selfish. It's something that we talked about before. If, especially in your 20s, you really have to be selfish in a lot of regards because this is a time where you're supposed to quote unquote take control of your life, figure out a lot about yourself, and set yourself up for your future. So I would say now in our 20s, we tend to be a little more selfish, but for a lot of times it's for our future selves and trying to properly figure ourselves out in this new adult world. And it's a little more necessary than other times in our life. But overall, you just have to find that balance of when you think it is appropriate. And unfortunately, some people do not have that self awareness, as Connor just mentioned. But there is no right or wrong answer, in my opinion. But what about you two?
So I'm very curious to hear what you say too, GT. Like Tanner said at the beginning, we all have different perspectives. I actually think that there is only one right answer, which is to focus on selflessness. And the reason why is because of what we've already kind of said. Human beings are naturally selfish. I think no matter what happens in your life, you're going to make decisions that are in your own self interest because of survival instincts, because of that is our nature. That is what we do. We look out for ourselves intrinsically without even realizing it at times. I know I certainly do. And I think that for me, in my opinion, the right answer is to focus on being selfless because I don't think that that is natural. I think that that takes work. I think that that's hard sometimes. And I think sometimes we have to go against our nature, even though we look out for each other and we like to go in packs and we like to group together and we need to rely on each other. That is also in our instincts. I think that at the end of the day, we are in these herds, for example, or in these packs together, or at least we were back then, because we could survive or we were a part of this pack because it was in our best interest for our own survival. If there was a better pack, for example, that you could go to that had better resources, a better life expectancy, you would go to that instead, right? That's what I'm talking about is like selflessness is about like choosing your pack even like out of loyalty, for example, or out of trust or out of dedication for the people that you love and care about in your life. When times are hard, you still have to choose the people that you love and care about. So for me, I think we need to focus on selflessness because we will always have selfish tendencies personally.
I see, and this is where you two are on different parts. However you want to look at it, who's on what, right? I'm right about in here. I'm in about the middle. I'm more of a situational, but I will say I do agree with Tanner, especially in our 20s, but also at the same time, I 100% also agree with the idea of Connor because yes, I think humans in general, it is very, very true that people are going to make selfish decisions. Absolutely, 100%. Because people are going to make decisions for the well-being of themselves before others more than not. But some people are more selfless. I try to make sure that because I like to be a little bit more selfless and help out like with people because I think in life for me is to help others and to truly be there for people. But at the same time, I can't put 100% into that because you have to do stuff for yourself.
You're
Yeah, I'm
situational.
just situational. I
Yeah,
tend more to be
makes
on
sense.
Yes.
selfless, but I also have to be selfish
Yeah.
sometimes.
I get it. It makes a lot of sense. Both of y'all's answers are completely valid.
And Connor's valid
Yes.
too. I
Better.
see where he's coming from very much. So you almost got me, Connor. You almost got me. I'm staying firm on my answer.
It's the passion. I'm just so
Oh my.
dedicated.
We interrupt this podcast for a quick word from our sponsors. Hey guys, something that we talk about in the podcast several times, and it's a theme that goes on throughout the podcast, is mental health and how important therapy services can be for you, especially in your 20s, as we're trying to figure this thing out called life. So that's why I would like to thank our sponsor for this podcast, BetterHelp. If you guys do not know who BetterHelp is, they are an online therapy service, the world's largest, with over 20,000 licensed therapists that are conveniently placed for you. All you do is fill out a questionnaire, and they try to match you with a therapist based on your wants and needs. And if you happen to not like that therapist, you can absolutely switch to as many therapists as you want to find a perfect one for you at no additional charge. You guys have a 24/7 text line with a BetterHelp service, a weekly video chat with your therapist, and much more included in this. Rather than in person therapy, which some people may feel a little intimidated by, this therapy on the go concept I think is brilliant, especially for people in their 20s who love the convenience and would rather have therapy at their own expense rather than having to go to a therapist in person. Guys, I think this is a great solution for a lot of people who listen to the podcast. I know that there are several people that I know who have used this online therapy service with BetterHelp, and it is fantastic. So if you guys are interested, visit BetterHelp, HELP.com/ Let's Talk 20s podcast to receive 10% off your guys' first month of therapy. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/ Let's Talk 20s. Guys, I appreciate you listening to the sponsor, and let's get back to the podcast. We're talking about selfishness and selflessness. One quality from both of these ideas that you have that you would like to improve on. So maybe it's a negative quality you have about being selfish, or a good quality that you want to improve on. Because there are elements of both in all of our lives, and it's important to figure out what we can do to improve. So what's one quality of selfishness and one quality of selflessness that you have that you would like to improve on?
All right. I already know. I saw this question. I thought ahead about this one. So my selflessness tendencies are definitely it's with my finances with people. I have a bad habit of when we're out and there's like a tab that needs to be picked up, or like people need to get an Uber. I have a bad tendency to pay for it. And
That's terrible.
That's bad.
And I don't. It's so bad, and I can't believe we're taking Ubers in Asheville. What the fuck's gonna happen there?
Oh my god! Start improving on that on June or May.
Fuck you. No, but seriously,
After
it's like right after the trip. Fuck you. No, it's like it's so bad because it's like I remember I think I paid $200 for an Uber for everybody one time, and nobody paid.
Uber, bro?
Nobody paid, dude. I also paid $250 for an Uber because I was trying to
I know if you're
like go on a date.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This is separate. These are two separate times. This one of them was last year because I was a dumbass. This was a while ago. It was like in UGA or something. But yeah, so I paid for an Uber and it was expensive. And there was like one person that paid me back and nobody else. I'm like, I'm fine with it, whatever. And I don't even think about it that much. But like thinking back on it now, I'm like, good God, man, I was just out like $150. I can't do that. So I need to improve on that with my selflessness because I know it's nice for me to do that and take the burden off of people, especially when everybody's struggling. And I like to make people feel happy. But I will screw myself over after a certain point, especially when I have a family. I know what my tendency is going to be to just, oh yeah, let's just do that. So no, I gotta reel it in a little bit. But my selfishness tendencies actually have to do with my anxiety. A lot of the times I realize that I've removed myself or pushed myself out of situations that make me anxious because I don't want to deal with it, my anxiety. And, anxiety is tough to deal with. And like, I have to learn how to develop coping strategies, but I need to push myself more, I've been realizing. And I need to push myself through that and let myself feel it, let myself feel the anxiety and not get out of bad situations or get out of situations that maybe people need me for that I'm anxious about. Like there have been times that people have asked me for help and it's made me feel anxious about what I had to do. And this was like way back in early college. And I made up an excuse that I couldn't do it. That's a bad tendency that that I'm much better at now, but I still would like to improve on it because it's not, I know it comes across like, oh, it's just he actually has stuff going on, but really it's not fair because I'm just making stuff up because I don't want to deal with it. And that's selfish of me because my anxiety, even though it sucks to deal with, it's my own thing and I have to be responsible for it. So those are my answers.
I can definitely see where you're coming from. For me personally, I think I'm gonna start on the selflessness is I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, which can lead to, people maybe taking advantage. And I'm not saying people have, but I would say just to be a little bit more cautious. I want people to think of me as more of a selfless guy, than a selfish guy. So I think that's definitely one quality that I think I need to be improve on is just be a little bit more cautious about how much I'm being selfless. So, and that comes with the balance of Connor and Tanner, that those ideas. And I would say for selfish, I would say there's times selfish where like I'll be on my phone where I need to just put it down. It's not that important. Technology will be here forever, but people will not be here forever. So
Yeah,
why
that's a really
so
good one.
why put technology before relationships and friendships and whatever it may be. So that's me
Yeah,
being completely 100% honest.
that's a very good one. I know a lot of
It
people,
is.
especially in their 20s, feel the same way. Probably deep down, they know that at least right now, it's scrolling through Instagram or doing a social media shit or just being so absorbed in our devices for hours on a day instead of being around, you know, people that love us or we love. For my selflessness one, actually kind of goes hand in hand with yours, GT, is that I need to stop. I need to stop telling myself that it's okay that some people in my life think that their time is more valuable than my time. Whereas people be on their phone or to me it's simple stuff where like people consistently say they're going to do something or be somewhere at a certain time and they're late every time or this or that, but it comes to a point where the excuses just aren't valid anymore. And to me it's almost disrespectful because you're almost saying that your time is more important or more precious and I have to wait on you or I have to forgive you instead of sticking up for myself and saying, why are you treating me like this? You know what I mean? Which I kind of mentioned before on an episode, I believe. And in terms of my selfishness, a habit I need to improve on, I definitely need to improve on the fact that I, at times, can. I mean, everyone's selfish, but I can be selfish to the point where I kind of hurt other people's feelings because I want it to be done this way. And if it's not done that way, then it's no way. So there's times with Cameron, for example, where I'll have her do something or we'll do something together, and it's like not 100% how my OCD brain envisioned it. So if it's not like that, sometimes I'll get a little pissed off, and it's like there is no reason for me to be upset about something like this. It's pathetic. So in terms of selfishness, taking a step back and not trying to be so controlling on certain things that do not need to be controlled in my life. So
I love that because we just
Hmm.
talked about the one qualities of each, but what about can both of them coexist together at the same time?
I mean, they have to, right? You have to balance them. You have to learn to make them coexist. That's kind of like the whole struggle of life is like if you give in to complete selfishness, you won't form any relationships with other people, and therefore you might be selfish in your own endeavors, but you might not have an impact on people like around you. I mean, you could make all the money in the world and even, donate to charities and stuff like that, but there's a level of emotional satisfaction and emotional connection that we need with each other. And there are countless studies upon studies that have proven that you need that. And that's like the biggest level of satisfaction for people who are older is their relationships with their friends and their family and their kids. But if you're too selfless, like we've talked about, even though I think, like I said earlier, personally, I think that's more important. Very valid points that you guys are bringing up is you're going to drown or you're going to screw yourself over to the point where you can't even act in any form of your own self-interest because you're so focused on other people. So they do coexist because that's like the balance and back and forth that you have to go back and forth with life, and they have to, and you have to learn to make them coexist, and it's hard. It's not an easy
yeah,
task.
Connor, you mentioned something we kind of are tiptoeing around. I think a big thing about this whole episode is that the sad truth about it is that we do not live in a world anymore where people are looking out for you. You can be the most selfless person, whatever you want. People will take advantage of you. We do not live in a world where you can be Mr. Nice Guy all the time and have everyone in your life respect that and not push the boundary or not take advantage of you. And that's the unfortunate thing about, growing up, at least in my opinion, is that we have to learn to have that kind of almost like toughness within ourselves to figuring out at what boundary or what point are we going to take people's shit and say, okay, enough is enough. Like that, I have to be selfish. I have to stand up for myself because people do and will continuously throughout your life, you know, take advantage of you, step on you. So I think they have to coexist because people will exploit your weaknesses, and it's unfortunate. But we've been talking about how selfish people are, and everyone has their own self interest in their mind the majority of the time. So if you're staying in their way and you're being selfless and caving in, then 9 out of 10 times they'll keep doing it again. But that's my opinion.
I we can be selfless as much as we want to, but people at some point people are going to try to take advantage of that. So I couldn't agree more with that. It's having that balance, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
when you're going too far, and you gotta reel yourself back, be like, okay, nope, I gotta bring it back. I gotta maybe come to the other side a little bit to get it back balanced up. So I agree 100%.
Yeah. We talked about both of these things coexisting together. It's something you got to grapple with in your 20s very clearly. And I bring up the 20s because a lot of people that I know in our immediate friend circle that we share and that I have, that you guys have, they look out for themselves and they're looking to succeed in life based on their own self-interest. And we've talked about how that's important, obviously, because like Tanner said, very good point, by the way, it's not a life anymore where people intrinsically always look out for you. You will get taken advantage of. So you do have to look out to yourself. But I do think a lot of people feel the need to do this because of like social media and because of influencers, and everybody's kind of about like, oh, it's all about the hustle and all about you and nobody else matters. And so I think there's a balance that we got to find. We give a lot of advice on the show, and I think this is a good topic to give advice about. What advice would you give to people about learning to act in your own self-interest but still being selfless at the same time? Like what are general pieces of advice for being like healthy selfish and then also maybe healthy selfless as well?
I think being being healthy within selfishness is the selfishness of maybe it's something that benefits you but can also benefit others. Not something that's solely on you to where, oh, this will be big on me. Where, you can do some things, but if it's affecting others directly, I think that's where it could be wrong. Especially if it's not, if it's unethical or if it's morally wrong, which everyone's gonna have different morals. That's just how it is, but I think if it's something where you can find little loopholes where people can also benefit from it, maybe if it's something where you want to have more advantage of yourself, you could also do something for maybe schools, or you can do something for the youth, or you could do something for different communities, or something
Mm.
where you're being selfish, but at the same time you're being selfless and helping others.
Yes.
I think for tips is just you can be selfish, but as long as it also benefits and helps someone else out, that makes it healthy and you can balance both of them together.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. The only thing I was gonna see actually kind of in a way said what I was going to say. I was just gonna add that you need, if you're trying to balance this, set aside time every day where you're doing a hobby, activity, or something where you are being selfish. For example, and it's very individualistic. You're playing video games. No one else is playing video games with you. You're going to the gym and working out. That is your time, an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, where you are releasing a bunch of energy and everything, and you are being selfish. It's these individual activities, hobbies, or even just time, set aside a day where you say, I'm being selfish, I'm doing what I want to do, no one bother me, blah blah blah. And then, like you said, GT, with your goals, it's just being very open-minded and empathetic, but also, like you said, realizing that a lot of the things that you think are for your own self-interest, whether it's your job progression or your financial gains or other things like that, where yeah, you're succeeding for yourself, but what about your girlfriend, right? Like you guys are living together, so your increase in pay can help her, maybe, or you two together paying off student loans rather than you saving the money and say, oh, I got all this money. It's just being conscious and open minded of how your specific goals can affect others, how your actions can affect others, good or bad. What
Like
about you,
that.
Connor?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you guys took both my answers. One of my answers is definitely have a selfish hobby. like going to the gym.
Yes.
Definitely, for sure. And it's not even selfish in a way. It's good for you. And it's like, it's a healthy thing to be selfish about, because if your workout goals are about somebody else, well, then you're not going to make a ton of progress, right? You got to be selfish with it. But I guess the only piece of advice I would give just generally about this topic is, don't let your pursuit of self-satisfaction overtake your expectations for what other people are supposed to give you. I see a lot of people who I have been friends with recently who they feel that their pursuit of their happiness and what they're doing in their life is like something that other people need to get on board with, right? And it's like, you got to get on my train, or otherwise you're not coming with me. And it's like, I understand that to a degree, right? You have to know yourself, you have to have standards, you have to have guidelines. I agree with all those things, but it's almost like these people that come into your life got to fit into this mold. And if they don't fit into this mold, they don't cut it. And it's like, maybe ask yourself if you're not being flexible, for example. Maybe your expectations for what people are supposed to give you are too high, for example. There's nothing wrong with having standards, nothing wrong with having morals, but you do need to realize that we're all people, and we all have different standards and different morals. And so expecting other people to just fit into that is a selfish thing to do, because they're not going to fit into it like 100%. So be flexible would be my thing. Is whatever your selfish hobbies are, whatever your selfless hobbies are, just be mindful and be flexible with what your expectations are for yourself and for others. That would be my advice.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Thank you.
Something I can work on for sure. A lot of people can work on that. 100%. That was some really good advice. And like I said at the very beginning of this episode, all three of us kind of have different perspectives on how we personally apply this balance of being selfish versus selfless. We also have different perspectives on what we personally need to improve on. And we also, at the end of the day, though, gave decently similar advice for people in their 20s or anyone who watches or listens to improve on, and tips and tricks that we have worked on ourselves. So it's funny how that works. And that's why we have a podcast. I love it.
Amen.
I love it.
Great episode.
Gentlemen, great episode. I appreciate you two being wonderful co-hosts as usual.
Love you being
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Another one down. Selfishness versus selflessness. I appreciate everyone who has watched or listened to this episode. Follow the Instagram page, Let's Talk 20s podcast. And as always, guys, I hope you had a great week. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And until the next one, peace.
Best podcast group.